Hi guys. Again, this is Carol, and I don't know where the lens is where to look at you. So if I'm looking off yonder, it's because I don't know where to look. How you doing? I'm doing okay. It's been kind of a rough day, but um, I've had a rough week. But anyway, I wanted to talk. I want to start a whole series of videos talking about mental illness. And I have some. I've got a playlist made. You can go up there to playlist, and I've got one on the videos I think are funny. Of mine. I've got a list of the couple that I've already talked about mental illness, and then I've got some others. I don't even remember what playlist I've got made, but there's some up there. um, and I'll tell you why I think it's so important that we talk about any kind of mental illness. When I grew up, heaven forbid anybody talk about it. Absolutely not. In fact, anything unpleasant was swept under the rug and you did not mention it. I grew up in a very weird situation in that our home was, we lived in isolation. We didn't see other people. We didn't have visitors come over. We didn't go visit other people. We didn't go to church. We stayed in our little bitty house. My dad was schizophrenic way back when there was no treatment for it, and so that was a strange upbringing with him because he was so ill. Anyway, I believe I've suffered with anxiety since practically the day I was born. And I believe that because when I was little, like my earliest memories are probably from age 5, I remember throwing up every single day. I hated the taste of Pepto-Bismol because that's what my mom gave me all the time because I was throwing up every single day, and that's not an exaggeration. And that lasted until my dad went to a mental hospital the first time, because back then it was an extended stay. I don't remember how many months he would be gone, but he would be gone quite a while. And to the best of my knowledge, that's when I stopped throwing up. Every day. I still, if you watched my 1972 dream wedding, you'll know I still throw up. But not daily. Anyway, I am not a health professional. I have absolutely no training in any kind of medical studies. I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I've just been on the receiving end since the mid-90s. I grew up with a parent that was schizophrenic when there was no medication. I know what it's like. And so one of the reasons I'm willing to talk about it is because back then you didn't mention it. You did not mention it at all. And what a shame, because those of us who suffer with mental illnesses, I think it really helps to talk to somebody else about it that can understand, somebody else with a mental illness that can understand. And another reason I want to talk about it is because I worked at a place where there are a lot of employees, and there was another lady my age that, heaven forbid, I did not know she had any kind of mental illness problems. She was like me, always laughing, always smiling, always cheerful, because those of us who suffer with depression or anxiety or stuff, we put on that mask so that we can cope with being out. We put on a mask. You know, there's one antidepressant commercial where the lady walks around with a smiley face on a stick and she's hiding behind that. That's what we do. That's what a lot of us do anyway. I do. Anyway, this other woman, I had worked with her a long time, years, never had any inkling that she had a mental illness, as she did not know about me. And one day she was at work and she seemed perfectly normal, laughing, went home and hung herself. And when that happened, I thought, maybe if I had just talked to her, if I had known she had this problem, we could have talked together and maybe we could have supported each other. Maybe we could have helped each other, because I don't want that to happen to anybody. And so from that day forward, I started telling everybody that I suffer with a mental illness, that I see a psychiatrist, that I'm getting help, so that if anybody else thought they may have a mental illness, maybe they would come talk to me. I would tell them to see a psychiatrist. And that's another thing I will not do on my channel, is I will not give you medical advice, because I'm not a doctor. I will tell you maybe what drugs I take. I may tell you some things I do, but I'm very leery of that, of giving advice when I'm not a medical professional. And I'll tell you another reason why. I have suffered with depression forever. My youngest son is going to be 35 this year. I had a suicide plan when he was about 2 or 3. And psychiatrists will tell you, once you make a suicide plan, you are in deep trouble. You need help. I had that suicide plan. Oh gosh, he was probably a teenager. He was a teenager before I saw a psychiatrist. All those years, the things that kept me from doing it is because I had 4 kids and I did not want to do that to them. That was the thought I kept in my mind. These kids need a mother. And so anyway, back before I ever saw a psychiatrist, now this is why I won't give out medical advice, I went to the only person I knew to go to, and that was a minister that I trusted. And I went to him, and I didn't know to call it depression. You would think I would have, but I didn't. I just knew. I felt overwhelmed. I felt exceedingly sad. I had suicidal thoughts. I had anxiety. I went and told him these things. And he said to me, well, Carol, I'll tell you what you need to do. You will feel so much better if you will just get out and go help somebody else. I went home, and that was the closest I ever came to committing suicide, because I was suffering with depression. When you suffer with depression, you are often totally exhausted. You can barely put one foot in front of the other. You can barely take care of yourself. You can't go out and do something for somebody else. Maybe if you're sad, that works. But if you are suffering from clinical depression, telling somebody to go help somebody else does not work, because I've got some notes here. Let me see so I don't tell you something wrong. Well, I do have some notes somewhere. Depression, true depression, not just having the blues or being sad. Depression is a neurochemical disorder. Your brain has had a hiccup in producing brain chemicals, and so you can't smile your way out of this. You can't help somebody else out of this. You need medical help. And that's the truth. I think I've always suffered with this from way back when. I know I had anxiety from my earliest memory. Depression, I know by middle school I was suffering depression. Now that I can look back and I know the symptoms and things. So I'm 66, so that's... I probably was in junior high. That's what we called middle school back in the old days. I was probably 12 or 13. So that would have been 53 years ago. I don't know what it's like just to feel minorly sad or have the blues, because I've always felt this horrible depression. But anyway, and one thing I tell people constantly, and some of my family members don't even listen to me, but because depression, why are you scratching on that bed? My puppy is scratching on her bed. Because depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in your brain, you take antidepressants, mood altering drugs, brain chemical altering drugs. So I tell everybody, don't go to a general practitioner when you're messing with your brain. See a licensed psychiatrist. Brain altering chemicals. These are the kind of drugs they're going to give you. Don't you want somebody who really knows what they're doing? Now, if you live back in the boonies somewhere and all you can get to is a general practitioner, well, do that and good luck. But if there is any way possible for you to see a psychiatrist, that is exactly what you need to do. Today, I want to just talk about anxiety, and we'll move on to the other things if you guys want to. Anxiety for me, and everybody's different, but anxiety for me is when I get anxious, first of all, I feel trapped. Like if I'm in amongst a group of people, I feel trapped. My whole body clenches up. My chest clenches up. My chest hurts. I have trouble breathing. Sometimes I feel sweaty. I feel like exceedingly fearful that something, impending doom, terror, something bad is going to happen. My heart races. I feel like throwing up. Sometimes I feel dizzy, but mostly I just feel clenched up and trapped and have this fear that I can't even explain why I feel this impending doom. And what that is, when you have panic attacks like that or anxiety, is God gave us all a alarm system, so that if we are in danger, the adrenaline kicks in and all these other chemicals in your body and gives you that fight or flight response, and that is what keeps us alive sometimes. Well, if you have a brain chemical problem, those things kick in, but your brain never gets the message to stop it now. That you no longer need that fight or flight response in your body. I get headaches if I'm having a bad time with anxiety. My muscles hurt because literally I'm clenched up. And honestly, I don't think I've ever been relaxed. Everybody tells me, relax, when my daughter rubs my back. When I see a chiropractor. One time, I don't hear very well, and consonants are hard for me to. My problem is I can't figure out what consonants are saying, what the sound is. And I went to a chiropractor one time, and he was trying to work on my neck, and he wanted me to relax. And he said, wiggle your feet, please. And I thought he said, because I couldn't understand wiggle and feet, I was guessing that he said breathe deep. So I took a deep breath, and he said again, wiggle your feet. So I took another deep breath, and then he said, that's odd, your muscles are just tensed up, but usually if people wiggle their feet, they relax. I said, oh, I thought you said breathe deep. Anyway, I feel tense all the time. I honestly don't think my muscles have ever totally been relaxed. um, there's no logical reason for my anxiety. It's not like a bear is coming straight at me. That's not why I have anxiety. Um, I have agoraphobia, amongst other things, and I don't like to be in crowds. I remember when I was in the mental hospital, just shaking, telling the psychiatrist that I saw there that being in a crowd just gives me so much anxiety and fear, and I feel so trapped. And he said, "How many people is a crowd?" And I said, "Two." He didn't bat an eye, just kept writing down notes. Obviously, he had heard that before. And that is the truth. If there's more than one person, I feel outnumbered and cornered, and I am not comfortable in crowds. So that's what my anxiety is like. I know from getting emails from some of you that you have anxiety too. I feel like it's important for us to talk about it so that we know we are not the only one. For a long time, I thought I was the only one that felt like this because nobody ever talked about it. I worry constantly about things that don't amount to a hill of beans. And I know it's easy to say, don't worry. Worry's just robbing you of a pleasant day. I know it is. But I overthink everything. I can't control the worry. And I know it's over irrational things that I shouldn't give 2 seconds thoughts to, but that's how my brain works. I feel, this is really weird. I'm going to tell you what. When I'm being me, I feel like anything I say to anybody will be the wrong thing and I'll be embarrassed. I feel like I'll be rejected. I feel like I'll be humiliated. So what am I doing on YouTube? Because I'm crazy. When I'm doing YouTube, in my mind, I'm talking to my sister. I'm talking to one of you that I've gotten close to. I'm just talking to one person. I'm not talking to the world. And I'm on YouTube. When I worked, I did a lot of public speaking to big groups, but that was fine because I was Miss Carol from the library lady. I could go out and do present workshops. I could go to, most of the public speaking I did was at elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. But sometimes I went to clubs like Kiwanis Club, things like that, and gave a talk on whatever they had asked me to do. And that did not bother me a bit. I wasn't fearful about that because I was going as Miss Carol from the library. It wasn't just me. And I realized that makes absolutely no sense. I remember one time at work, we were having an awards presentation for people who completed like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, something like that. And there were a bunch of us. We were going to have lunch, and we would all be given these pins and, that kind of thing. I remember telling my boss, it was taking place in my story time room, which could be open. There was a collapsible wall, and it could be made into a huge room that would seat 250 people. But that was the room I worked in every day, doing story times for umpteen groups. But I remember on the day we were going to have this, and I was going to receive my 15-year pin, I told my boss, there is no way I can walk in that room. I can't. I cannot do it. I can't walk in that room. He said, Carol, that's the same people you've been talking to all day long. But the difference was I was talking to them as a coworker, as Miss Carol. I wasn't talking to them as just me. Does that make sense? I would not go in that room unless he went with me, which he had to do anyway. But I was not going to go in there first by myself. Could not do it. I literally could not make myself take a step. And I think a lot of you understand that. Anxiety and brain chemical problems it's just weird. But I want you to know, if you have these kind of things, you are not alone. There are millions of us that have it. And I wish way back then I had had somebody to talk to about it. So I think that's all I want to say about anxiety right now, because I'm getting anxious. I can almost feel that paralyzing feel just talking about it. Do you ever have that paralyzing feel where, I mean, you cannot move? Oh, I will tell you one more story before I go. One of my sons has mental health issues. Everybody in my family does. It's genetic. We know it came from my father, and it came from his father. It's just a genetic thing. But anyway, one time I had gone to a therapist with one of my sons. He would see the therapist first, and then the therapist would see me for 5 or 10 minutes, and we would discuss whatever. My son would be there, but we would have a discussion. Always he was a nice guy. The therapist was a really nice man, and it helped a lot. But just to have to talk about those things is exhausting and stirs up anxiety. And it's good, but it's also exhausting to do that. Anyway, we left the therapist office, me and my son. We went to a big grocery store. I needed to get something for lunch. We were both a basket case. I mean, just seeing a therapist, getting through your time period, 45 minutes usually, just drains you of everything. It's just exhausting. But anyway, we went to this big grocery store, me and my son, and we you know how grocery stores are. Everything that's refrigerated is on the outside walls. And so at this store, at the very back, was where bacon was, and sandwich meats, and packages of deli meat, that kind of thing. We walked through the store back to that back wall. First of all, there was a store full of people, and neither one of us liked to be around people. So just getting to that back wall was a trial. We got back there, and we were so much of a basket case. We stood there looking at this. It seemed like a huge, gigantic wall of all different kinds of sandwich meats and deli meats. And when I'm really a basket case, I can't make a decision, and neither can he. We stared at this wall. And both of us could not make a decision. I knew it. We didn't have to say anything to each other. He just turned and ran out of the store, that fight or flight feeling. And I stood there and just started to bawl over which sandwich meat should I pick up. That's how it is for me. Maybe it's not that way for you, but that's how it is for me. Okay. If you think it's helpful for me to talk about my symptoms, what I go through, the little I know about mental illness problems, let me know, and I'll do some videos on depression. If you want to know, I'll tell you what it's like to go to a mental hospital. We can talk about anything you tell me. Send me an email. And you can tell me, let's talk about blah, blah, blah. Okay? I'm going to go now. See you later. Bye.